Okay, everyone, welcome to Get Lit with Lynn. And let's jump into what we have to talk about. So just to follow up, last week I talked to you about Cicely Tyson's new memoir. And this week, as you all likely know, sadly, she just died at 96. And what can I say? Her book is sold out. We ran out of copies, but a sad and interesting coincidence, but I'm glad that she was able to put her story down before she left us. There was another interesting article, and I can send you, as I said last time, I will send you the list of the titles that I'm going to talk about, and I can send you links to articles if you want. But this was quite interesting, an obituary I read of Christopher Little, who was J.K. Rowling's literary agent. So first of all, I will just quickly show you his picture. He was known for his eyebrows.
Oh my God.
So it was a fascinating story about how he had a different career, then he started being an agent, and she sent him her book kind of randomly. She picked his name out for some random reason, and he didn't usually do children's books. And in fact, he turned it down, or he wasn't going to read it, but then someone who worked in his office read it and talked him into reading it, and he took it on, and the rest is history. But he really gets a lot of credit for making her what she was because of the way he negotiated it. He sold the first book, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, which became the Sorcerer's Stone in the US, and he didn't get a lot of money for it, but he got really high royalties, and he kept all the rights, the international rights, the movie rights, everything. And then he waited a few years while the book took off. And once it became successful, then he started selling all the rights and made her a fortune. Somewhere along the line, pretty far into their relationship, the guy a lawyer who worked for his agency, who had been involved in a lot of the contracts, left to start his own agency and took J.K. Rowling with him. So he was distraught to lose his star client, but he does get credit for building her. All right, give me a sec, guys. Okay, and in other publishing news, an article in Publishers Weekly magazine about the unbearable whiteness of publishing. This is something I keep revisiting, but this is a big topic right now. There was an article in 1995 in the Village Voice with this title that examined racial disparity in the American book and magazine publishing industries. And two women wrote an article this week in Publishers Weekly saying, unfortunately, not a whole lot has changed since that article, and how really more work needs to be done. There are some new groups working for this, something called We Need Diverse Books, which is a really terrific group. Penguin Random House took a step in addressing the lack of industry diversity over the summer when it released its own racial and ethnic statistics on warehouse and non-warehouse employees, and a plan for how they plan to continue to diversify. So that is the publishing news that I have for you today. I cannot believe that in the miserable cold February, how many new books were published today. So I'm going to tell you quickly about some nonfiction, but I am focusing on fiction tonight. First book that came out today, it's called 400 Souls, A Community History of African America, 1619 to 2019. And it's edited by Ibram Kendi, who is the author of How to Be a Racist, which is a book you might know, and Keisha Blaine. And this is, I think, a really important major book that needs a lot of discussion. So I'm going to get back to it, but I did want to tell you that it exists. It was just published. And this was published, Think Again, The Power of Knowing What You Don't Know, by Adam Grant. Now, Adam Grant, do some of you know him? Yep. He's he's a professor at Wharton. A previous book of his is called Originals. He, I think, has TED Talks. He's very prominent and successful and interesting. So I'm excited. This idea of knowing what you don't know, just is so important. Like that's the first step to learning, is admitting that you don't know something. Here's a book, Humor Seriously, Why Humor is a Secret Weapon in Business and in Life, if you want that. And then this is a lovely book called Like Streams to the Ocean, Notes on Ego, Love, and the Things That Make Us Who We Are by Jedediah Jenkins, whose previous book was called To Shake the Sleeping Self. So this is a more contemplative book that was just published. But now I am going to jump into fiction. And here is what I did. I did an experiment yesterday because I found that I was telling you about a lot of new books, but I wasn't able to read them because they're new. So I took a whole pile of new fiction that was being published today, and I read the first chapter of each book.
Good for you.
It was fun. It was really fun. And so I'm going to give you my evaluation of these books based on what I read so far. And I will be interested to see what the reviews said and how much you really can figure out just from the beginning of the book. The first book that I have for you is called A Bright Ray of Darkness by Ethan Hawke. So I didn't know that Ethan Hawke was a novelist. This is published by Knopf, so very, very prestigious publisher. And oh, can you see this brooding photograph of him? Are you fans of Ethan Hawke, anyone? He's talented. This is, oh, I was going to say, it's a very striking cover. Do you get it? Ha, striking. So I actually want to tell you something about book covers, and particularly Knopf book covers. Many of them were designed by a man named Chip Kidd, who became very famous as a book cover designer, has written his own books about graphic design. And so to have a Knopf book with a Chip Kidd cover was a big deal. However, this is not a Chip Kidd cover. This is a John Gall cover, and he's pretty prestigious too. And just quickly, I'll show you his website, because these are some of his books, and I bet you recognize them. So he's a big deal book cover designer too. Okay, so Ethan Hawke, the book starts out, and the main character is a movie star. So it's very hard not to think of the character as the author. And what you learn in the beginning of the book, that yes, Ethan Hawke played a very good Hamlet. He does Shakespeare, and the character in the book is doing Shakespeare too. So he's just come back from shooting a movie in South Africa, and apparently his personal life has kind of exploded across the tabloids. I'm guessing because he cheated on his wife. And he gets off the plane at JFK, and he gets in a taxi, and the taxi driver is like, I know who you are, and decides to give him a piece of his mind for how he's living his life. And it's interesting. He's playing with the taxi driver, who obviously doesn't have a great command of the English language, and says some funny things like, "You are hearing me? I am not crying salty tears for you, my friend." And then at the end says to him, "Please take a shower and smell more better." So the first chapter was fast and funny, well-paced. It's a good milieu. It takes place in New York. It's about the theater because he's about to go into rehearsals for a Shakespeare play. So it sort of promised some actor insidery dope. So I thought that would be fun. That was book number one. Next book, How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House. Very beautiful cover, sort of Caribbean colors and island flavor to that book by Cherry Jones. And so the book actually opens with a prologue. And the prologue takes place 5 years before the action in the book. And the main purpose of the prologue is to have this young girl, Lala, with her grandmother, and her grandmother to tell her this folk tale of the one-armed woman and how she went into the tunnels where she wasn't supposed to go, and there were very bad consequences. And then you flash forward 5 years, and in the first chapter, you can see that Lala probably didn't follow her grandmother's advice. She's pregnant. She's about to give birth. She's married to a man who has just committed a murder. So things are kind of a mess in her life. And I sort of was thinking that you made a really bad choice in love. I'm not so sure I'm interested in following your story. But then I peeked ahead to the next chapter, and the next chapter took place from the point of view of the wife of the murdered man. So I thought that there might be some interesting back and forth and different switches of point of view. So that's that book. The next book is called Better Luck Next Time. And the author is Julia Claiborne Johnson, whose previous book was called Be Frank with Me. Did anyone read that? So this is really a book that I personally probably, based on the cover, would not have picked up. It looks a little too, dare I say, chicklet for me, but it was a Barnes & Noble book club choice, so I thought I should give it a try. And this one also starts with a prologue, and it starts with a kind of prologue that I'm not a big fan of. The prologue takes place in 1988, but the story takes place in 1938. The story is about a ranch, a dude ranch in Reno, Nevada, where women went to get divorced. Right, Cheryl, you know about this, you're smiling.
No, I just had read something about this book. You know.
Okay. So the women go, and if you have residence in Nevada for 6 weeks, then you can legally get divorced there. So they go. And the story is about what happens on this dude ranch in this time period, but it begins with some nameless interviewer knocking on the door of some guy who's an old doctor. And the interviewer has a photograph. Is this you in the photograph? And he's like, why, yes, that was me. And he starts out saying, oh, hello, it's Dr. Howard Stovall Bennett III at your service. So he's like Mr. Folksy Tennessee doctor. And he talks like this. He says, some knuckleheads think a bedside manner can't be taught. Hogwash, anyone with a lick of sense can do it. But then 3 paragraphs later, he's saying, I learned not long ago to talk about my cowboy past because people have such lurid tabloid sensibilities. So it didn't quite fit together for me. But this old man looking back on his life conceit is familiar to me. The book I think of that did it was Water for Elephants. Did you read that? And I just don't understand why. Why do we need this silly little prologue with this old man saying, oh, you want to hear about the time when I was a stud and I was 24 and I worked at this dude ranch? Great, I'll tell you the story. So I think if you're going to do something like this, there needs to be a purpose for it. Some of us have just read Shuggie Bain, and that starts out with an opening section that's 5 years, well, after the action. And I think there's a purpose for that, right? The author wants to show us something about this character that he thinks we need to know at the beginning of the book. So that's that. Please interrupt if you have questions.
Who is the author of that?
Julia Claiborne Johnson. I think it's probably a fun atmosphere and a fun story. Okay, the next book is called Milk Fed by Melissa Broder. So the very first sentence of this book took me in. It starts out, it didn't matter where I lived. And that's the kind of sentence that I love because it just plunges you right into the action. You start moving forward right away, but you're off balance because you don't know who's the speaker, where do they live, why doesn't it matter? Like all of a sudden you have all these questions. And for me, that's something that keeps me reading. But then the book jumped into the crux of it. And the first chapter was about a woman with an eating disorder who is chronicling every single calorie she eats all day. And she is telling us about the food that gets her through the day. And that was a little too reminiscent of some people I know. But then I did keep reading. I actually read the first 10 chapters of this. They're super short chapters. And I think the author is witty. She has a therapist, and I love books with therapy sessions in them. Like Lori Gottlieb, maybe you should talk to someone. That's not a novel, but if you ever read that, it's terrific. And Irving Yalom, two therapist writers I really like. But the idea is that her therapist tells her that she needs to take a diet from her mother. For 90 days, she can't talk to her mother. So that's sort of the premise of the book. All right, there's lots more. I might need to go faster. I might not get through all of it. This one is called The Bad Muslim Discount by Syed M. Masood. And it's his first novel. And this one, you know, as I'm reading through all these books, this one felt completely different to me. It just felt weightier, and it's so well written and more substantive. It starts out in Karachi, where the narrator is a young boy, and they're living in Karachi at a time where the Soviets have just invaded Afghanistan, and the Taliban are gaining force, and fundamentalist Islam is gaining force, and so their world is really changing. And the boy's father decides that it's time to leave Karachi. And it's just sort of, for me, introducing me to a world that I don't know a lot about, and I really enjoyed that. It also starts out in a very compelling way. The first sentence of the book is, "I killed Mikey." And that'll get your attention. But then you very quickly find out that Mikey was a goat, and that he was being a sacrificial goat for a holiday. But nonetheless, it was a pretty arresting beginning. And I think this book offers a lot. It offers a sort of some armchair travel. It offers some philosophy, like when his mother says to him, "Life is not about what we want, because if you do what you want, if you get what you want, then there is no one to blame if things go wrong. Your world, if you make it what you want it to be, becomes your responsibility." And then there's poetry. When he makes his last visit to the beach in Karachi, he says, "The sea speaks to you when you're born by the ocean. It sings to you. If you stand still just out of reach of the water for long enough, you begin to sense a small echo of the infinite inside yourself. And in the violent crashing and breaking of waves, you begin to feel at peace." So then I peeked ahead to the next chapter, and the next chapter is from the point of view of a girl named Safwa who lives in Baghdad. So I'm guessing we're going to go back and forth, and that, you know, maybe that's them on the cover. Maybe they find each other in California. This Close to Okay by Lisa Cross Smith is got a very dramatic opening scene. A woman is driving across a bridge in the rain in an unnamed city. I think she turns out to be somewhere in Kentucky, and she sees a guy about to jump, and she decides that she is going to stop him. She also happens to be a therapist, so she feels somewhat comfortable in this role, and she pulls over and she talks him out of jumping, and then she takes him out for coffee, and then she takes him home. So it's about their developing relationship. I would say, you know, two lost souls find each other. I don't know where it's going to go, but I was interested. The writing is good. She has some really nice phrases. I picked out one in particular I liked. She wished she could tell him the cedar scent matched his eyes. Maybe he'd understand what that meant. Maybe his senses infused one another too, leaked out, left stains, like how the rain could make her go gray-blue, and how the gray-blue left her with the cloying taste of blueberries in her mouth. I like that writing. So that's that one. Then we have Good Neighbors. Good Neighbors is a very different sort of book, out of my wheelhouse, really. It's a sort of a murder mystery. It takes place, it's disguised as a sociological study, and the opening section purports to be an excerpt from an academic study published in the year 2043. And it is an analysis of an incident from 15 years prior in which the residents of a suburban Long Island neighborhood murdered a family on their block. And apparently people are obsessed with this crime. It was even made into a Broadway musical. And then we go back to that present day and find out what happened. Speaking of books that involve crimes, this one, Girl A by Abigail Dean, is really intense. Based on awful stories that we've read in the newspaper about parents who imprison and torture their children, this is from the point of view of a woman who has escaped such a family. And the book begins in the first chapter. She's 30 years old. She's going to the prison where her mother has been held, but her mother has just died. And she's going to pick up her mother's remaining personal effects and starting to remember back to growing up in this household with her 5 siblings where they were not fed and they were chained to the bed and locked in their rooms. And, you know, it's very disturbing. But, you know, I mean, I can think of disturbing books that I've read that have been beautiful reads. I think of Room by Emma Donoghue, or The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold. You know, both books about really difficult subject matter, but beautifully written. This is a book that's getting a lot of press, and it's kind of over my head. It's called Fake Accounts by Lauren Euler. It's very densely, intellectually written. It's from a small press called Catapult. It has a blurb from Zadie Smith on the front, so that's so great for them. It's about a woman who's dating a guy, and she peeks into his phone and discovers that he's got this huge Instagram following under a pseudonym, where he's a conspiracy theorist. And so she kind of dives into that world, and that's what that's about. Okay. Now, Ellen was just saying that she's reading Epiragon by Colin McCann. This is another book about the Arab-Israeli conflict, or about life in Israel. City of a Thousand Gates by Rebecca Sachs. It's a big multi-character book. It goes back and forth, people from different backgrounds. The book actually, it's one of these books that starts out with a list of the cast of characters. That's so, I guess they think that you need help keeping track.
I just heard her interview today.
You did?
Yeah, from AJU.
Oh.
I'm blanking on what the American Jewish University. There are
Okay.
28 characters there.
Oh,
I think you really need that. And each one has a part in the story. It sounded very interesting.
I mean, again, this is me after having read the first chapter, but I liked it. I
Yeah.
mean, the first chapter is the story of this Arab guy who is working construction in Jerusalem, and he doesn't get out of the city in time, and his work permit is expired, and he's afraid he's going to get stopped by Israeli soldiers, and he's going to get sent to prison. And, you know, it's moving, it's scary, it's disturbing. So it was good. This is The Kindest Lie by Nancy Johnson. This is about a wealthy Black couple who are living in Chicago. The book begins just on the night that Obama wins the election, and they're very excited. They're married. He wants to start having children, but she has a secret. The secret being that she actually gave birth to and gave up a child when she was 17 years old. Then she went on to go to Yale, get a degree in engineering. He knows nothing of this. And that's where we're going to go in this book, including she's going to go back to her hometown and deal with the poverty that's there. And so I think this is going to be a lot about social structures and politics and so forth. And Lauren Fox, Send for Me is, I think this could be appropriately categorized as a Holocaust novel about a woman who is living in Germany just before the rise of the Nazis, and then several generations later, her granddaughter finds a cache of her letters. I mean, really, if I never read another book that either started with an old man remembering his experience or started with somebody finding somebody else's letters, I'd be fine. Sorry. So there are more books that came out today. I don't know that I have time to do more. Maybe if we have time, I'll do it next week. This is The Removed by Brandon Hobson. And this actually is a book that's going to get a ton of buzz. So I will talk about this next week. This is My Year Abroad by Chang-Rae Lee. So that is definitely going to be a big book. But that is my presentation. And it was really fun. And if you ask me which one I'm going to pick up now and read all of it, I don't know. Are there any that grabbed you? Which one sounded best to any of you? I know they went by very fast.
I was intrigued by A City of a Thousand Gates.
Yeah.
That's intriguing. Yeah.
That one sounds really good. I think Rebecca Sachs, she has an MFA from University of California at Irvine. She has done a lot of magazine journalism. She wrote for Vanity Fair before moving to Tel Aviv to pursue a Master of Arts in Jewish Studies. And now she lives in Los Angeles with her dog, Pupik.
I'd read, Lynn, I'd probably read Ethan Hawke's book.
Yeah. I think that's what I'm going to do tonight, Dana. I think it's going to be me and Ethan Hawke and a glass of red wine.
I'm going to send you, Lynn.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you a 41-second clip of my grandson in the British Academy of Music doing something with that.
Okay. All right. I'd love to see it.
He's in theater, so it's fun. Yeah.
Play it for all of us.
Okay. And I will send you all the titles, and I will send you the link to the articles that I refer to. The Kindest Lie. Yeah, The Kindest Lie is, right. If you don't already know, you've figured out by now that I'm kind of a literary snob, right? You know that, right?
You're entitled.
Thank you. So this is more commercial. That's all I'm saying. It's more commercial. Wait, Kathy, you want to read the Bad Muslim Discount? I definitely want to read Bad Muslim Discount.
I might have to wait. Like, I feel like it's a beach read.
Yeah, it's just.
I feel like Memorial Day weekend.
I'm not sure. I mean, it feels more substantive to me than that. He's really good, but they packaged it to look more beach ready.
I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean, I want to relax on the beach.
Oh, right. When you have time to really read. Yeah. And then the Lauren Euler, I mean, this one is really just very, very dense. So I'm a little too scattered right now to focus on it. Oh, it's Ethan Hawke's second novel, Patty? Okay. All right. He's talented. But yeah, I think that's cool. You really, well, I'm glad that it's okay that I'm a literary snob. I think, seriously, I mean, I said in the beginning that I'm astounded by how many novels were published today, but not only that, they're all really good. I mean, not one of these books is badly written, right? I mean, any one of them will give you a good read. You know.
And how often do new books come out?
Well, I mean, new books come out every Tuesday. I mean, new books come out all the time, really, but Tuesdays are a day that a lot of publishers announce them, which is why I do this on Tuesdays.
Okay.
But this is a lot, you know. This is usually like in the spring or before Christmas, there would be this many, but I don't know. I guess they anticipated the snowstorm and that we'd all be housebound and we'd need a lot to read. So anyway, Well,
All
I don't want to
these-
keep you
All
too
these,
long.
all these books that you talked about today didn't just come out today, right? They're from last week?
No, they're all from today. Every
All of them
single,
today?
every single one of them was from today,
And you read all these first chapters today?
yesterday. I snuck them out of the store early. Shh, don't tell. I'm
Okay.
not really allowed to, but you know, I'm the manager. No one's going to stop me. So I took them all home. Yeah. All right. Oh, wait, that was recorded. Shh. All right. Thank you for joining me, everybody. It's
Yeah.
wonderful
Thank
to see you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you. Same time next week.
Right.
Yes, thank
All
you.
right, take care now.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.